The heat on the ridge felt heavy that evening, almost like a giant hand pressing down on the stone walkways. It rolled between the cliffs long after sunset, trapping warmth in every corner. Ethan Cole walked slowly along the upper path, his boots clicking on the metal grid. He had just finished a long and dangerous 12-hour shift, checking pressure lines and climbing narrow shafts where one wrong move could send a man falling into darkness. His back ached. Sweat dried on his neck, leaving the smell of metal dust on his skin. All he wanted was a hot meal and sleep. But then he heard something, voices echoing from below. At first soft, then sharper. A tone he knew too well. The kind of sound people make when they think they're safe enough to laugh at someone weaker. Or someone different. Ethan slowed. Blue lantern light flickered against the cliff walls. It came from the pairing plaza, a circular stone platform where matches were chosen by officials, not feelings. Ethan wasn't in the pairing line anymore. He had removed his name months ago, tired of being treated like breeding stock. But tonight, something in the crowd noise pulled him forward. He walked down the stone steps. Shoulders shifted, whispers rose as people noticed him moving through them. Ethan ignored them. His eyes were locked on the figure standing in the center of the platform. She was huge. A Titanborn widow, taller than anyone else there. Her skin was a deep green, catching the cold blue lantern glow across her strong arms and wide shoulders. Muscles shaped her legs like carved stone. She wore a tight white evaluation wrap that stretched across her ribs and hips, clearly made for someone smaller. Her long white hair was tied in a rough braid that reached her waist. She stood with a straight spine, jaw tight, eyes fixed forward, like she was holding up a weight no one else could see. Floating above her were glowing orange words. Tessa Corinne, Titanborn widow, pairing approved. Ethan's chest tightened. He knew that name. Her husband had died in the East Span collapse last cycle. Ethan had been on the inspection team the day after. He remembered the wreckage, the crushed steel, the smell of burned wires. He remembered how silent the ridge workers were, especially the Titanborn teams who repaired the damage that killed one of their own. Now people on the benches whispered loudly. She'd break a bed in one night. Look at her size. Imagine feeding her. She's a walking ration drain. Tessa heard every word. She didn't flinch, but Ethan saw the tension in her shoulders. Tight, strained, almost shaking. She asked the officiator to skip the projections. He refused, continuing to list her offspring viability in a bored voice. Then Ethan stepped off the last stair. The officiator frowned. "Citizen, the benches are behind you." Ethan didn't answer. Tessa finally looked at him. Slowly, her gaze moved from his boots to his jacket, then to his face. Her eyes sharpened, confused but alert. The officiator raised his voice. "Citizen, remove yourself or declare interest." The plaza went silent. Ethan felt something click inside him. A decision forming like a solid beam sliding into place. He said, clearly, "I'm declaring." A ripple went through the crowd. Tessa bent down, lowering her massive frame until her face hovered close to his. Her breath warmed his cheek. Her voice was low, rough, almost broken. "I need a husband," she whispered. "And you need strong children, human." The words were stiff, like she was repeating a script forced on her. Ethan kept his eyes on hers. "I know who you are," he said softly. "And you deserve better than this." For the first time, Tessa's expression changed, surprise flickering behind her tired eyes. And in that moment, the entire platform shifted. Not the stone, the fate of two lives. The air in the pairing plaza changed the moment Ethan spoke. It felt sharper, colder, like every pair of eyes suddenly turned into knives. People leaned forward on the benches, whispering fast, shocked that a normal-sized human man had stepped onto the platform to claim a Titanborn widow. No one expected it. No one believed it. Tessa Corinne didn't move at first. She stayed bent over him, her giant frame blocking half the lantern light. Ethan stood completely still under her shadow. He could feel her breath warm against his cheek. She was close enough that he could see the faint lines of strain around her eyes, the small signs of someone holding in too much for too long. The officiator cleared his throat loudly. "Subject Corinne, do you acknowledge this citizen's declaration?" Tessa's jaw tightened. She had heard this question before. Many times. But never like this. Never with someone standing in front of her willingly. She studied Ethan again, slower this time. His clothes were worn, dusted from long work shifts. A faint scar ran along his jaw, the kind that came from equipment snapping or rocks slipping. His stance was steady, not challenging, not afraid, just grounded. Most men looked at her with fear or fake bravado. Ethan looked at her like she was simply another person. A heavy-looking, exhausted person, but a person. Her voice came out deep and rough. Why did you step forward? He didn't hesitate. Because you were standing alone. Her breath caught for half a second. It was small, but Ethan noticed. No one ever talked to her like that. Ethan continued, I know what you did during the East Span collapse. I know you saved workers before the plates fell. You pulled 3 men out. I saw your initials in the incident report, but none of that was listed here. He pointed gently to the glowing orange script above her head. The crowd turned uneasy. The benches shifted. They weren't used to someone challenging the board's files. Tessa swallowed hard, her massive throat moving slowly. Why would that matter to you? She asked quietly. My husband died there. Because it matters to you, Ethan said. And they never asked. That hit her deeper than she expected. A soft pain flickered in her eyes, quickly hidden. But it was too late. Ethan had already seen it. The officiator, annoyed by the long silence, spoke again. Subject Corinne, do you acknowledge this citizen's interest? Tessa felt a strange pressure in her chest. She had never been given space to choose. She had been examined, measured, judged, but not asked. She looked at Ethan again. His hands were relaxed by his sides. No shaking, no pretending to be brave. Just calm attention, waiting for her answer. Her huge fingers twitched slightly. Step closer, she said. Ethan stepped forward until his boots touched the circle drawn around her position. Tessa slowly lifted her hand. Massive, calloused, strong enough to bend metal. She placed it on his chest. Her palm nearly covered his entire upper torso. She could feel his heartbeat under her hand. Strong, steady, unafraid. The last of her doubt cracked. I acknowledge him, she said. The crowd gasped. Even the officiator paused. But Ethan didn't move. He kept his gaze on her, steady as rock. That's not the same as choosing, he said softly. Another ripple ran through the crowd. They weren't used to a human man challenging a Titanborn on the pairing disc. Some people laughed nervously. Others leaned forward even more. Tessa inhaled deeply. She had never chosen anything freely since her husband's death. Everything had been orders, routines, evaluations, repairs, grief. She didn't know how to choose anymore, but she knew what felt right in this moment. Finally, she straightened her spine, towering above him. I choose him, she said. The officiator quickly scribbled on his slate, his voice tight. Preliminary pairing approved. Review pending. People muttered. Some shook their heads. A few scoffed loudly. Ethan ignored them. He held Tessa's eyes. I'm taking you home, he said. Not to the dorms. To my place. Tessa blinked in surprise. No man had ever spoken to her like that. Not with force, not with fear, but with simple, steady certainty. She felt her heart thump once, hard. Okay, she whispered. For the first time since her husband died, the giant widow stepped down from the platform. And she wasn't walking alone. Tessa followed Ethan up the narrow stone steps, her heavy footsteps echoing behind him. The plaza noise faded slowly, replaced by the quiet hum of night winds sweeping across the ridge. She walked carefully, unsure how close to stand, unsure if she should speak. Something about the moment felt fragile, like one wrong word could shatter it. Ethan didn't rush. He kept a steady pace, adjusting slightly so she had space to move. Every few steps, he glanced back, checking if she was comfortable without making her feel watched. When they reached the residential terrace, the lights were dim and warm, unlike the cold lanterns of the pairing platform. Small gardens lined the walkways. The smell of cooked herbs drifted from nearby windows. People here moved slowly, tired from their own shifts, not interested in mocking anyone. Tessa relaxed her jaw, just a little. Ethan stopped at a narrow stone doorway built into the cliff wall. This is my place, he said quietly, tapping the keypad. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Tessa froze. The doorway was much smaller than any Titanborn housing she had known. She would have to turn her shoulders to fit. She looked at Ethan with a hesitant expression, unsure if she should even enter. He noticed. It's tight, he said gently, but we'll manage. No one here will judge you. Tessa breathed out slowly and stepped sideways through the door. The frame rubbed her shoulder, but she didn't complain. Inside, she straightened slowly, careful not to hit the low ceiling beams. The apartment was small but warm. A single bed platform sat against one wall, a low cooking counter against another. Shelves held metal bowls, dried herbs, tools, and folded blankets. A pot simmered on a heating plate, filling the air with the thick smell of ridge beast stew. Her stomach tightened with hunger. Ethan stepped inside behind her, closing the door. "Sit," he said, pointing to the couch. "You haven't eaten since morning. I can tell." She sat carefully. The couch creaked under her weight, but it held. She placed her hands on her knees, unsure what to do with them. Ethan ladled stew into a large bowl, larger than any normal portion, and handed it to her. She held it with both hands. The warmth seeped through her palms. She took a slow bite. Her eyes widened. It had been months since she tasted something cooked with care, not rationed, not processed, not given because she needed to meet strength standards. This was food someone made because they wanted to eat well. She ate slowly, savoring every mouthful. Ethan sat on the floor across from her, cross-legged. He didn't take the couch. He didn't stare. He just let her eat. It unsettled her more than mockery ever had. "You live alone?" she asked quietly. "For 3 years," he said. "My work shifts are long. Easier not to drag someone into that." She looked around again. The room felt like a place shaped by habit, not loneliness. After a moment, she asked, "Why did you step onto the platform?" Ethan sighed softly. He seemed to search for the right words. "Because they weren't looking at you." "Not really. They only saw numbers. They didn't see the person behind them." Tessa looked down at her bowl. Her grip tightened on the edges. "I'm used to that." "That doesn't make it right," Ethan said. His tone was so plain, so firm, that it struck her like a physical force. She wasn't expecting someone to argue with her sadness. When she finished eating, she tried to stand and help clean the dishes. Ethan gently blocked her with a hand. "Sit. You've done enough standing today." Her lips twitched almost into a smile. He washed her bowl, then rolled out a padded mat beside the bed. "You take the bed," he said. "I'll sleep here." "No," she protested. "This is your home. And you need the rest more than I do," he replied. "That's all there is to it." She looked at the bed. She looked at him. Her muscles ached from holding herself stiff all day. Her mind ached from holding everything else. Finally, she nodded and lay down carefully. The reinforced frame groaned, but held firm. She pulled the blanket over herself, barely covering half her legs, but it was warm and soft. Darkness settled. After a minute, she whispered, "Ethan?" "Yeah," he answered from the floor. "You didn't choose me because of my size, right?" "No," he said calmly. "I chose you because you stood there alone and still didn't bow your head. That's strength. Real strength." Tessa swallowed hard. Her chest felt tight. Something unfamiliar. Something heavy, but warm. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered. "You don't have to earn that," Ethan said softly. "Just rest." And for the first time since the East Span collapse, Tessa fell asleep without fear. Soft morning light slipped through the cracks of the terrace window, painting thin lines across the floor. The small apartment was quiet, except for the low bubbling sound coming from Ethan's cooking pot. He moved around the kitchen in calm, practiced motions, cutting dried meat, heating water, sprinkling crushed herbs into the pan. His steps were light, almost silent, as if he didn't want to disturb the person sleeping on his bed. Tessa Corinne woke slowly. Her body felt heavy but rested, a strange feeling she hadn't felt in months. The blanket had slid halfway off her long legs, and the tight white evaluation wrap she wore felt even more uncomfortable now that she'd slept in it. She sat up carefully, blinking at the soft light filling the room. Ethan turned his head just enough to look at her. "Morning," he said simply. His voice was gentle, too gentle for someone who spent his days climbing dangerous shafts and checking unstable beams. Tessa rubbed her face, still adjusting. "Morning," she replied, her voice low and rough. She swung her legs off the bed and stood. The white wrap dug into her ribs. She tugged at the fabric with a frown. "Here," Ethan said, pointing at a wooden chest near the wall. "There's a shirt inside. It's big, for a human, at least. Better than that thing they forced on you." She opened the chest with 2 fingers and pulled out a dark gray shirt. When she slipped it on, it stretched tight across her chest and arms, stopping just above her waist. But the fabric was soft, warm, and nothing like the stiff white wrap. She rolled her shoulders once. "Better," she said. Ethan nodded. "Much." He handed her a metal cup filled with hot herbal brew. The scent was sharp and calming. She wrapped her large fingers around the cup carefully so she wouldn't crush it. "You made all this?" she asked. "I cook for myself every morning," he said. "Keeps me focused during long shifts." Tessa studied him. His hair was messy from sleep, his shirt wrinkled, but he moved with purpose. Everything he did, cutting, stirring, pouring, was done with calm patience. She wasn't used to that kind of energy. Most people spoke to her too loudly, too quickly, as if size made her deaf or stupid. But Ethan treated her like she had a normal place in this small room, even if her head nearly touched the ceiling beams. She sipped the brew. It was hot and strong. "This is good. Helps wake up the muscles," Ethan said. "You'll need that today." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" "Because I'm taking you to find proper clothes," he said. "Work clothes. Ones that are actually made for Titanborn." Tessa froze for a moment. No one had offered her something so simple before. Clothes that weren't assigned, measured, or forced on her. "You don't have to do that," she said quietly. "I know," he replied. "But you shouldn't have to walk around in something that hurts to breathe in." She looked down at the shirt again. It stretched over her chest, the sleeves tight around her arms. But she could inhale without the fabric digging into her ribs. That alone felt like freedom. After eating together, her sitting on the couch, him on the floor, they stepped outside. The ridge wind hit them immediately, carrying dust and the faint smell of baking rock. Tessa walked carefully behind him, still unsure how her huge body fit in this quieter part of the terrace. "Stay close," Ethan said. "People up here aren't bold enough to say things out loud, but they stare." She didn't need the warning. She already felt the glances. But they were different from the mocking eyes on the pairing platform. More curious, less cruel. They reached a clothing stall tucked beneath a rock overhang. The vendor, an older woman with braided hair and sharp eyes, looked Tessa up and down, but not with disgust. "Just calculation. Titanborn sizes are in the back," the woman said. "Heavy-duty wraps. Reinforced belts. Work pants that don't rip in 2 seconds." Tessa blinked. The woman wasn't afraid. She wasn't condescending either. She was just direct. Tessa picked up a deep green wrap made of thick but flexible fabric. She pressed her fingers into it, testing its weight. Her chest loosened a little. "Take more than one," Ethan said. "You'll need options." She shot him a small glare. "I'm not making you spend all your credits." "You're not," he replied. "I'm preparing you for work. That's all." Her lips twitched. A tiny almost smile. In the end, she chose 2 wraps, reinforced trousers, and a heavy belt big enough for her hand. Ethan carried the bundle to the counter without hesitation. As they walked away, Tessa spoke softly. "Ethan, why are you helping me so much?" He didn't slow. He didn't stumble over the answer. He just said, "Because you deserve a place where you can breathe." The words hit her deeper than she expected. She looked away quickly, hiding the warmth rising in her chest. They walked side by side through the terrace, the city stretching ahead of them. For the first time since her husband's death, Tessa walked with something that felt close to hope. The East Terrace workyard was already alive when Ethan and Tessa arrived. Machines hummed, metal clamps clacked, and thick ropes swung from cranes as morning crews prepared for the first load cycle. The air smelled of hot iron and dust, a smell Tessa knew better than her own breath. This place felt familiar, dangerous, demanding, honest. Tessa paused at the entrance, her new work clothes fitting better than she expected. The green wrap crossed firmly over her chest, the reinforced trousers hugged her strong legs, and the heavy belt sat tight around her waist. She looked like someone ready for labor again, not a display item on a pairing platform. But her stomach tightened with nerves. She hadn't stood in a workyard since the day her husband died, since the day the East span failed beneath them. Ethan touched her elbow lightly. "You'll be fine," he said. "You were born for this." She nodded, though her throat felt tight. The foreman, a square-shouldered man with dust already coating his sleeves, approached. He looked up at Tessa slowly, taking in her size, her stance, her controlled breathing. Titanborn made some foreman nervous, but this man only raised one eyebrow. "You worked before?" he asked. 6 cycles, Tessa replied. "Good," he said simply. "Let's see your grip." He pointed toward a cluster of long steel beams stacked near a cargo hauler. 3 workers stood by, adjusting ropes and checking balance clamps. Tessa walked toward them, her steps heavy but controlled. She placed her hands under the lowest beam, testing the weight with her palms. It was heavy, very heavy, but familiar. She inhaled, braced her spine, bent her knees, and lifted. The beam rose from the ground with slow, steady force. Her arms locked into position, her shoulders tightened, her entire body remembering the old rhythm, the Titanborn rhythm. Foot placement, breath control, center of gravity. Every movement calculated, every step purposeful. The workers around her exchanged glances. Respectful ones. Tessa carried the beam across the yard without wobbling, without shaking. When she set it down, the foreman nodded once. Good. Join cycle 1. A simple word. Yet her chest warmed as if he'd shouted praise. Ethan watched from the edge of the yard, pretending to check equipment, but really following her movements like a trained inspector. He noticed how she adjusted her hips when turning, how she favored her right leg slightly, how her breathing changed under heavy load. She was strong, but she was also carrying old pain. Still, she didn't stop. For hours, Tessa lifted beams, secured cables, tightened anchor clamps, and guided heavy loads with expert control. Her new team watched quietly at first, unsure what to think of her. But when she caught a slipping plate before it crushed a toolbox, and possibly a worker, the team no longer whispered. They nodded at her. Some even smiled. During the midday break, Ethan approached with a cloth-wrapped portion of ridgebeast meat. She was sitting on a metal crate, sweat darkening the edges of her hairline. You did good, he said, handing her the food. She chewed slowly, savoring the salt and smoke. I didn't drop anything, she said. You didn't break anything either, he added with a smirk. Her lips twitched. Your humor is strange. It works, he replied simply. Tessa wiped her mouth, then shifted slightly. Ethan noticed the movement, a small wince as she adjusted her leg. You're favoring your right side, he said quietly. She stiffened. It's nothing. It's an old injury, Ethan said. I can see it. Tessa sighed. My husband and I fell 2 levels once. The safety net caught us, but my leg never healed right. They kept me on full duty anyway. Ethan's jaw tightened in anger, not at her, but at the system that pushed workers until they broke. You're not on their team anymore, he said firmly. You listen to your body now, not the board. Her breath slowed. Those words meant more than he knew. The whistles blew for the next cycle. Tessa stood, rolling her shoulders. I can keep going. I never doubted that, Ethan said. By the end of the shift, the workers treated her differently. Not like a burden, not like a giant to fear, but like someone who carried more than her share and still stood tall. As she and Ethan walked home, her steps were slower, heavier with the day's weight. But the heaviness felt good, honest. Work pain, not shame. She stopped once, glancing back at the yard. I forgot how it feels, she said softly. How what feels? Ethan asked. To be useful, she whispered. Not measured, not displayed, just useful. Ethan stepped beside her. You were never useless, Tessa. You were simply unheard. She held his gaze for a long moment, something warm and uncertain rising in her chest. Then she followed him up the terrace steps, the city glowing beneath them. For the first time since the collapse, Tessa felt like she belonged somewhere, by effort, by choice, and by her own strength. Evening settled slowly on the ridge city, painting long shadows across the metal walkways. The last heat of the day clung to the stone, but the work-yard noise had faded. Only the soft hum of distant machinery remained. Tessa walked beside Ethan, tired but steady, every muscle aching from hours of lifting and hauling. Yet for the first time in what felt like forever, her body's pain felt earned, not forced. Ethan kept a slow, even pace beside her. He wasn't trying to guide her, but he stayed close enough to catch if she stumbled on her right leg. He never mentioned it, never pointed it out again. He simply adjusted himself naturally, as if it was the obvious thing to do. They passed through the lower terrace market, where lanterns glowed golden against the stone walls. People moved about quietly, buying food, carrying tools, returning home. A few glanced at Tessa. Some stared. She was hard to ignore. But there was no mocking this time. No cruel smiles. Only surprise, curiosity, or simple respect. She noticed a small child peeking from behind a crate. A boy no older than 5 stared at her with bright eyes. Instead of fear, he lifted a wooden toy shaped like a cargo clamp and held it up proudly, showing her. Tessa froze for a second, unsure how to react. Ethan leaned slightly toward her. Kids see strength, he said softly. not numbers. Tessa's chest tightened. The boy waved again, smiling. She gave a small nod in return, and the child giggled before running off. The moment stayed with her, warming some cold corner inside her ribs. When they reached Ethan's apartment, Tessa stepped inside first, ducking slightly through the doorframe he had reinforced earlier. She noticed immediately that he had been busy. The main beam above the entrance had been filed smooth, metal braces tightened, and the curved support plates aligned so she could pass through without scraping her shoulders. "You worked on this today?" she asked. Ethan shrugged lightly. "You hit the frame again this morning," he said. "Couldn't let it stay that way." She touched the reinforced bar with 2 fingers. "You fix things fast," she said. "I fix what needs fixing," he replied. The simplicity of that answer hit her strangely hard. Inside, the room was warm, lit by a single soft lamp. Ethan moved through the space like he always did, quiet, methodical. He unpacked a bundle of dried herbs, washed a handful of vegetables, and set a pot on the heating plate. The smell of simmering broth filled the small apartment. Tessa leaned against the wall, watching him. There was nothing grand about the way he worked. No dramatic gestures, no heroics. But every movement was sure and steady. He moved like someone who understood danger and steadiness in equal measure. Finally she spoke. "You shouldn't have stayed in the workyard all day just to watch me." Ethan didn't look up. "I wasn't watching you. I was watching the supports. And your posture," he added with a faint grin. Her lips twitched. "You're terrible at pretending." He finally looked at her, eyes steady. "I wanted to make sure you felt safe," he said, plain and honest. She opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. Safety wasn't something she expected from anyone, especially not a human man she had known only a short time. Ethan placed 2 bowls on the table. "Sit," he said, "before it cools." She sat carefully, folding her large legs. The bowl felt small in her hands, but the food smelled rich, salt, smoke, and fresh herbs. She took a bite. Her eyes closed for a second. The warmth spread through her tired body. "You're tired," Ethan said quietly. "Yes," she said, "but not the kind of tired that hurts. The kind that feels real." He smiled at that. After dinner, she set the bowls aside and leaned back against the wall, legs stretched out. Ethan sat across from her, polishing a metal tool calmly. The quiet between them was peaceful, no pressure, no expectations. After a long moment, Tessa broke the silence. "Today felt like I earned something," she said. "Not approval, not forgiveness, just a place." "You earned much more than that," Ethan replied. "You reminded them who you are." She lowered her eyes. "I was afraid I had forgotten." "You didn't forget," he said. "You were just trapped somewhere that wouldn't let you be yourself." Her breath shook slightly. She didn't cry, not yet, but her chest felt full, almost too full. Ethan stood and walked to the door, checking the hinges with practiced ease. "Tomorrow will be harder," he said without looking at her. "First cycles always are." "I can handle harder," she said. "I know you can," he replied. Ethan dropped down and braced his shoulder under the end of the plate beside her. "On 3, he yelled. 1, 2, lift." Together, Human and Titanborn pushed the beam back into place long enough for the last worker to escape. Seconds later, the structure collapsed behind them. Silence followed. A heavy, awe-filled silence. Workers stared at them with wide eyes. Some whispered Tessa's name. Others clapped her shoulder. Respect, real respect, spread through the crowd. By the time the officials reached the site, everyone had already seen the truth. Tessa and Ethan stood in the center of the wreckage, covered in dust, breathing hard, but alive. Strong. The lead official looked stunned. "Your pairing," he began. Ethan cut him off. "Our pairing isn't your decision anymore." Tessa stood tall, dust drifting from her braid. "We saved your people," she said. "Together." The official swallowed, then finally nodded. Full approval granted. But Ethan and Tessa barely heard him. They were already walking home, side by side, silent, exhausted, but certain of one thing. Their bond had never needed approval. It was built the way all strong things are built. Under pressure, in truth, and with both carrying the weight together.